Yep, I see the notification.
Okay, and now we're recording. We're going live. Aloha and welcome. Today we are holding another one of our free webinars, bringing to you as much information about invasive species as you can handle. I'm Franny Brewer. I'm the Communications Director for the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. And once again, if you've tuned in for these before, you'll recognize some of the faces up here. We have our whole outreach team, Molly Murphy, our plant Pono coordinator. She is. We have Kabehi Lopez in Waimea. She's our outreach assistant. Hi. And Jade doesn't have her camera on, but we have Jade Miyashiro, our little fire ant technician. And everybody's going to be online to help you with questions and answers. If you're on Zoom, there's a Q&A box. You can type in your questions there, and we will either answer it directly or answer it. We'll have our guest answer it live. And if you're on Facebook, go ahead. Kabehi's going to be following that chat, and you can type stuff into Facebook if you have questions. But we're being joined today by Bill Buckley, our Forest Response Coordinator at BISC. And Bill came to us 6 years ago. Before that, he was working at the Forest Service, and originally a West Coaster, got his undergraduate degree in forest science at Humboldt University, and then a master's in environmental science from Oregon State. So right now, Bill is has most of his time taking up with rapid ohia death, because Bill is our early detection team leader for rapid ohia death, but he started with us really heavily working on Albizia. So we've got a wealth of Albizia knowledge here with us today. And I will now turn it over to you, Bill, so you can welcome. Thank you for joining us, and please share with us.
Okay, thanks, Franny. Well, I'm going to share my screen. So as technology goes, we'll see. This might take a second.
Okay, Bill, we just need presenter view, and then we'll be good to go.
Yep. Oh, started at the wrong spot. Sorry.
No worries.
As usual.
So everybody gets a preview of all the wonderful information we're going to have today.
There we go. You got all that, right? I'm done?
That's it. Super speedy webinar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, Franny. Again, I'm Bill Buckley. I'm the Forest Response Program Coordinator here at Big Island Invasive Species Committee. I have the opportunity to work not only with Albizia, but also, like Franny said, with rapid ohia death. It's a whole nother topic, and is one of those things that we'd like to work with on the island here and get a better grasp of. But, anyway, today we're going to talk about Albizia. Our team name is the Albizia Assassins. We've had quite a number of Albizia Assassins through our work here at BISC, but also through teaching people in different community groups. And we love our Albizia Assassins. So today I'll just talk to you a little bit, first off, about just some general information about Albizia trees. And then I'll describe to you why I think it's a problem for the state and also just for this island in particular. I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are occurring that are helping to mitigate the hazard of Albizia trees on important infrastructure like highways and power lines, et cetera. I'll talk to you a bit about what individual homeowners and property owners can do about Albizia trees in their property and also within your community. So first, let me just start off with a little bit of basic information about Albizia, Buckley molucana, just in case you're interested. It was one of the most widely planted trees in the forest reserves in the early 20th century. So throughout the presentation, keep this number in mind. There were about 140,000 Albizia trees planted across the state. These trees are native to the Moluccan Islands. They're fast growing, 10 to 15 feet per year. At one time, they were the fastest growing tree in the world by Guinness Book of World Records. So we have that, going for us. And that's a very fast growing tree. Maybe I don't have to tell you that. Here in Hawaii, we do have some very fast growing trees, but Albizia is definitely our top fastest growing tree. They put on seeds after only 4 years. And not only do they put on a few seeds, they put on a lot of seeds starting 4 years in. Again, for a tree, that's very, very quick. to put on a lot of seeds 4 years in. So they grow fast, they put on seeds very quickly. They're found in mesic to wet forests, all the way up to 3,000 feet elevation. So they can be on disturbed soils, they can be in a forest, they can be on lava flows. They're some of the early inhabitants of lava flows. So they're a problem tree. So that's the next step. I'm going to talk to you about why I think it's a problem and why other folks think it's a problem. Okay, so they're a fast-growing tree. They put on brittle branches. They have a shallow root system, and they tend to fall over or break in high wind events. I'm going to get a little bit into why they put on brittle branches and why they have shallow roots shortly. But I want to talk to you about, first off, we've had big storms. Albizia is the main culprit in the destruction after these or during these big storms. So the example I'll give is Tropical Storm Azelle, which happened, 6 years ago. We just say it just smashed Lower Puna. 30,000 people were without electricity after that storm. Many emergency access routes were blocked. Millions and millions of dollars of damage due to this tree, and it was almost entirely due to Albizia trees. So it's a problem. You can see from these photos, there's cars smashed, there's roadways blocked, power lines. But the thing is, we often catch ourselves saying it's because of high wind events that Albizia trees fall. But I can share with you a photo from my driveway from last week. Not a particularly windy day, not a particularly stormy day, but a big Albizia fell across our road and took out our power. I just walked over there to look at it just to confirm, yes, indeed, it's Albizia. It's about a 3-foot diameter Albizia tree right on the side of the road. Took out our power, and you can see up in the upper right-hand corner, road workers were out working well into the night, all night long, actually. We talked to one of the supervisors the next day, and she said they were working all night, and they were planning on working the whole next day, too. So here it is, one large tree next to a power line that's supplying power to the Hamakua coast. And that's a major issue. Not a big wind event, and it still fell over. Okay, so problem. So Albizia is a nitrogen fixing legume. That means that it can take plant unavailable nitrogen and convert it into plant available nitrogen for its own use. It incorporates that into its growth, and then the leaves fall down on the ground. The leaves in the stems and the twigs and the whatnot, all the branches, they fall onto the ground. They decompose in the soil there, and they increase soil nitrogen. And that's a problem because native plants, our ohia, like in the right side here, and our colea, like in the second to right, they are not adapted to using that much nitrogen. They're adapted to these really low nitrogen soils that the islands have. But what are adapted to using the heightened amount of nitrogen would be invasive plants. So what we see is this negative feedback loop where you get Albizia come in, they create all this plant available nitrogen where there normally wouldn't be available nitrogen, and increase the soil nitrogen. The invasive plants really love that. So then now we've got this bloom of invasive plants underneath Albizia trees. And we see it time and time again, like tons of grasses and strawberry guava, different melastomes, and just different invasive plants that come in after Albizia comes in. So it's a problem not only for public safety, but also for native ecosystems. It spreads very quickly. Like I was saying before, it grows quickly. It puts on seeds very quickly, and it moves in their wind dispersed seeds. They have little wings. And so they can be moved in the wind very well, very readily. They're lightweight and tiny. An example of this, in 1993, along the Wailuku River, on the left-hand side, what we see is a map of the Wailuku. And we have just like a few patches of Albizia tree equaling about 10 acres of Albizia in 1993. Here in 2009, so that's 16 years later, sorry, bad math, 16 years later, we have 35 acres within that same area. So it increased by 3.5 times in 16 years. That's a big increase. That's a lot of area that was consumed by Albizia. So here's a graphic representation of something like that. This is up by Honomu in 2011 in that upper left-hand corner. This area is a fallow sugarcane field. So they're no longer growing sugarcane out there, obviously on the Hamakua coast. So 2011, there was one Albizia tree standing out in that fallow pasture field. 2 years later, 2013, in the lower left-hand corner, you see that there's a lot of Albizia keiki. And this, I just took this picture the other day, 2020. So 9 years after the first picture, and we have a full-on Albizia forest. The trees are, I would say they're probably 70 to 90 feet tall, and it's consuming quite a large area. Okay, so problem. Obstruction of the view plane. Now this one really gets me here. It's in 1980, this is like the early 1980s. We have one Albizia tree. This is boiling pots. You can see in the background, nice view of Mauna Kea above the waterfall there, really nice view. In 2012, here's the same view on the right-hand side. So we know that that sugarcane operation was still in operation into the 90s. So about 20 years after they went, that these sugarcane fields went fallow, we have a full-on Albizia forest, and it's blocking these nice views. So there's early 2012, we see on the right-hand side there. This is the same view in 2015 after we got done with our work. Oh man, that guy right there, that tree, that's my nemesis tree right there. We stood at the base of that tree several times over the course of several days looking at it, trying to figure out how the heck are we supposed to get to that tree. So we treated all these trees, and I'm going to talk to you about how we did it using an incision point application using milestone herbicide. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but anyway. So 2015, we've got a bunch of dead Albizia trees, defoliated, fine branching still attached. This is the same view in 2020, you know, just the other day, sent the team up there to go check it out. What I was really, really hoping for was that we would get a little glimpse of Mauna Kea in the background, but unfortunately the clouds are there. So hopefully, you know, I would like to keep going up there and see if we can't get that view of Mauna Kea back. So we'll work with state parks on that one. So there's that. Now, so there it is. That's my argument for why Albizia is a problem. Many folks agree with me on this. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
Bill, I'm not seeing any questions right now.
Okay, great. No worries. You're welcome to interrupt me if you want to, like, no problem. So like I said, many folks agree that yes, Albizia is a problem, not only on this island, but also throughout the state. In May of 2013, a technical working group convened to try to deal with Albizia trees. So you see that this working group convened before Hurricane Iselle, and that's, for many people, Hurricane Iselle was like a landmark. It was a timestamp as to when really Albizia hit the fan, I guess. So anyway, in 2013, the technical working group convened. It included members from Big Island Invasive Species Committee, Hawaii Department of Transportation, County Department of Public Works, HELCO, DOFA, Forest Service, and others. So it was quite an impressive array of entities. It was a really neat looking scene with, you know, tons of computer screens and lots of high tech stuff going on. And so what they did was they all got together and they said, let's work on a way of dealing with Albizia so that we can protect our important infrastructure in a way that makes sense and is helpful. So 3 goals that came out of this working group. Each of those entities is identifying their priority infrastructure. Okay, so that's a first start. What is it that we're trying to protect? Then they said, okay, well, we need to look for an innovative approach for handling this problem. Because what we're doing now is just, Albizia grows too fast, it spreads too quickly, we're not keeping up with it. We need an innovative approach. And finally, and very importantly, we need to engage the community so that not only can we get the backing of the community, but also folks can be empowered with learning how to deal with Albizia in their own property and in their own community. And so there's you know, this multiplying effect when you start getting the community together. That's what we're doing today. So thank you for coming. So step 1, identify priority infrastructure. And the graphic here on the left, this map on the left, you see in blue, we've got power lines. So these are power lines that are negatively impacted by Albizia trees. So Helco went through, they delineated their priority infrastructure that was being impacted by Albizia. What is that? Pink would be the county prioritized roads that are being impacted by Albizia. The yellow are state highways that are being impacted. The red sort of polygons or blobs there, that is Albizia. This is, we hired a consultant several years back to go through and map out all of the Albizia here in East Hawaii. Right now, I mean, shoot, that was probably 2013, 2014 when she did the work. So the map would look totally different now, mostly because Albizia is spreading. So the county said that they had about 22 miles of hazardous trees that needed to be dealt with, 845 acres of non-hazardous trees. So let's start to see that distinction. Hazardous trees are trees that could fall on important infrastructure, fall into your yard, on your fence, on your house, your catchment, a road, the power lines, and these kind of things. So a hazardous tree is distinctly different than a non-hazardous tree. A non-hazardous tree will not fall on something important. And so we need to make that, I want to make that distinction clear from the get-go. The county estimated that in order for them to deal with, you know, these 22 miles of road and these 845 acres of non-hazardous trees, it cost them about $1.8 million. Again, this is in 2013, so all these numbers are going to be a little bit different right now, but this is what we're looking at. The state, 8.8 miles of hazardous trees, 314 acres of non-hazardous for a cost of about 1.3 million. And then Helco said they had 18 miles of hazardous, of power lines that were being negatively impacted by Albizia trees. And that equated to about 655 acres of non-hazardous trees. So again, just kind of keep these numbers in the back of your mind while we go through the rest of these slides. So here's, I'm going to go through a few examples of dealing with some of these priority infrastructure and dealing with the Albizia that's along them. Let's first start off by the table here in the middle. So the county said, okay, we have all these miles of hazardous Albizia trees that are impacting our infrastructure. So then let's break it down into project level sites. So for example, Puanako Extension or Maku'u or Pohoiki Road. So those are sites, those are project sites. And then they said, okay, well, let's start keeping track of how much it is that we've dealt with so that we can keep a running tally and we know where to put our efforts and our investment. So on the left-hand side is a map of the Hamakua coast, all the way from Hakalau Mill down to Wainaku. We worked with Helco and Hawaii Department of Transportation to work on this project site with them. And the way that looks, and this is getting into that innovative approach to dealing with the Albizia tree. The innovative approach is the folks that have the money, that own the infrastructure, that have the ability to contract large projects like this to, contract arborists. They get the arborists to go through and they trim up all of the hazardous trees to make them safe, to make them non-hazardous. And then the BISC team or others go through and they will treat all the non-hazardous trees. So in this example, we went all the way from, again, Wainaku, all the way up to Hakalau, and we treated all of the properties that we had permission for. And that was all of the properties except for one way up there by Akaka Falls. So we got permission. That's one of BISC's strong suit, as we're able to communicate with the public to get these permissions. And in this example, we got almost all of the trees along the Hamakua coast that were negatively impacting that infrastructure. So I just got into it a little bit. That innovative approach, again, this is coming from that technical working group that was back in 2013. They said, let's delineate that priority infrastructure and then come up with an innovative approach to deal with this hazard. And again, that innovative approach, shocker, let's work with our partner organizations so that we can deal with these trees and appeal to our partners on strong suits. Again, this strong suit, we are able to get permissions. We're able to work outside of the right of way. Okay, most of these entities like Helco and HDOT and in the county, they've got a right of way, and it's very strict that they stay within that right of way. Okay, Bisque, we don't have a right of way. If we have permission to access your property, which we will go through and you know, talk to each of these property owners and make sure it's real clear, we are going to go into your property and we're going to go work on your property. For the most part, people are very happy to have us come and treat their Albizia trees. So the innovative approach, the folks that have the money, that own and want to secure their infrastructure, they pay for the hazardous trees to be mitigated. And then, you know, chip in some money for us. So then we'll go through and we will mitigate all the non-hazardous trees. And we do that with this incision point application of milestone herbicide, which again, I'll talk to you about here in a minute. Oh, well, I guess I'll talk to you about it now. So milestone herbicide is a reduced risk pesticide by the EPA. It has real low toxicity to humans and other mammals. It has little to no impact on the human or mammal body, but it really works very, very well on Albizia trees and other legumes. It's called an incision point application using this milestone herbicide, or hack and squirt. That's pretty much what everybody calls it, is hack and squirt. And what you do is you take a hatchet, like in the upper left-hand corner there, you take your hatchet, you cut into the Albizia tree, and let me get my cursor out here. Okay, so you can see this is the bark, obviously, and you can see my cursor. There's that little red tissue right there, and then this nice white glossy tissue. That white glossy tissue is called the sapwood of the tree. And the sapwood is where the plant moves its water and nutrients up and down from the roots to the stem and roots to the leaves and then back down to the roots. If you can get your herbicide right into that sapwood, it's a really efficient, really effective, very safe way of making herbicide applications. So for each of these hacks, so I'm going to call this a hack. For each of these hacks or injection sites, you apply 0.5 milliliter of milestone herbicide. That's 100% concentrated milestone herbicide, but 0.5 milliliter, which is about 1/60th of an ounce. On a small tree like the example up here, you might only do 1 or 2 hacks. So very little herbicide goes into the tree, and it's very effective. Within about 2 weeks, the trees will defoliate, like these ones here at the bottom of the screen. They'll defoliate, never to come back. On larger trees, you're going to do more hacks, but I'll get into some of the details here in these coming slides. Like I said, a very efficient, very cost-effective way. Non-hazardous trees, again, we only treat non-hazardous trees with this hack and squirt method. They cost about $3 to $5 per tree. That is very inexpensive when you're looking at the cost of managing forests of Albizia trees. About $200 per acre, developed by Dr. James Leary, formerly of CTAR, now of Florida State or something like that. So here's a video just of me doing an application. Cross your fingers, it works. Okay, quick, easy video. So you hack in. I like to do what we call the tock, tock, pop, because you go tock, tock, pop a little piece out. It gives you like a really nice spot to apply your herbicide. And you saw just a little bit of herbicide that went in there. Like there's just like a stain. Now, in other species, that herbicide might kind of pool up a little bit inside of this lip right here. You'd see like a little pool. It'll sit there while the plant sucks it up. In Albizia trees, I guarantee that there was no pooling. I know this, I looked at it, I saw it. There's no pooling. It goes into the tree so quickly. So there's very little time for any of that herbicide to escape the tree. The tree just absorbs it very, very quickly. It's actually kind of impressive. So again, here's the bark. You can see that red tissue there, that's the inner bark. And then this white tissue here is the sapwood. All of that herbicide got absorbed into the sapwood, into the vascular of the tree. That tree right there was properly applied. Later on, I'll do another hack on this side. do 2 hacks on this tree, 2 applications, that tree will die. It will lose its leaves in the next 2 weeks and it will never come back. Okay, so here is another example. So here's the ideal. You find these trees when they're small and vulnerable, they take very little energy, they take very little herbicide allocation, and you deal with them when they're small and vulnerable. Don't wait. If you wait on this tree for another year, that little 4-foot tall sapling right there is going to be, anywhere from 15 to 20 feet tall. So deal with it now. And all you do, you just break the stem and you put a couple little drops. That's it. That's not even a 1/2 milliliter. That's probably a 90th of an ounce or something along that line. So very little herbicide, very, very efficient use of the herbicide. If you don't apply herbicide to these trees, if you just cut it, 100% of them will come back. And I'll show you an example of that here in a moment. But you definitely, you could feasibly pull that out by the roots. If you leave some of the roots, then those roots will sprout and they will come back. So it's there's a balance in there. You want to make sure you get all of the root material, all of the stem material, and make sure that you apply herbicide to the exposed tissue there. Okay, so here's an example of somebody cutting this tree but never applying herbicide. So first off, where I'm pointing here, we've got 2 stems. So probably a long time ago, somebody cut way down here at the base. Oh, where's my mouse? There it is. Somebody cut way down there at the base below the grass line. And then we had 2 stems pop up. And then it got tall enough that somebody said, okay, let's just cut both of these tops off. And now you've got all these multiple stems. So if they had just did the initial herbicide application to that cut stump, they wouldn't ever have to deal with it again. But instead they choose to just keep hacking away at the tree. Now, when you go to do an application on a multi-stem tree like this, what you want to do is either do an application to both of these main stems. So that would be really, since this is a small tree, you'd really only have to do 1 hack or 1 injection to each one of the stems. If it was a larger tree, then you would be better off putting applications into each one of these individual stems. So what we have here is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think there's a 6th one around the back. So your best bet would be to apply to each of the individual stems if it was bigger. Since this is a small tree, I would just put a hack or an injection into each one of these individuals. And then put a 1/2 milliliter of herbicide into each application. And what's it look like when you just do a whole bunch of trees all at once? I like this video. So that was just the other day. We went out and just had a good time with some of this time-lapse photography. And I don't know, however many trees that was. It didn't take a whole lot longer than what you're looking at there, but it probably took me 5 minutes to treat all of those trees. So again, fast, efficient, effective use of herbicide to, again, effectively treat all of these trees. All those trees that I just hit in that 5-minute period, they will defoliate in the next 2 weeks and they will never come back. Now, the most difficult and least safe, I guess, part of this application is getting to the tree. And so, for homeowners, I want to just make it really, really clear, property owners, folks that don't do this professionally, I want to make it really clear that you want to be very careful getting to these trees. We know that out on this property, there's all sorts of cracks, there's loose rocks, there could be a big hole in the ground, there's slippery material, there's all sorts of hazards out there. So getting to this tree is the most hazardous, most difficult thing that Nate can do. So here's Nate, big, strong guy. He's hacking his way in so that we can access these trees. The better the path that you can make, the safer it's going to be. But I am going to get to one point here in a little bit that Albizia trees and seedlings are shade intolerant. So you don't want to just go clear this entire forest just to get to that tree, because then you're going to disturb the soil. You're going to open up the ground level to sunlight. Albizia trees really love sunlight. Seedlings love sunlight. They'll sprout like mad. So what you want to do is just make yourself a path to get to safely access the tree, do your application, leave via the same path, and try to avoid disturbing the vegetation as much as possible. Okay, so how do we know that these things are effective? Well, there's research that goes into it. So we worked with Dr. Flint Hughes of the U.S. Forest Service at the Institute for Pacific Islands Forestry in Hilo to treat a whole mess of these Albizia trees. And then his team of research technicians went out and collected data for several years on this. So here we see that, okay, in the upper left-hand side, there's the control is the larger of the two bars, and then the treatment is the smaller. So what this looks like is all of the leaves drop very quickly after a milestone application. So what they did was they gathered up all of the leaves over time, and actually it was for a couple of years, they calculated how much leaf matter from Albizia, it's a meticulous process, how much leaf matter from Albizia dropped underneath these treated trees. So that would be leaf litter per hectare per year. You can cut this in half, essentially, if you think on acres instead of hectares. You can cut all this in half, and that'll give you per acre per year. So what we see here is that after the treatment, the Albizia tree flushes, it drops all of its leaves. The leaves don't just keep pouring in like they do in the untreated area or the control area. And so there's just a constant rain of Albizia leaf litter. And that's what that's saying. The graph on the bottom shows the leaf litter fall on a month-by-month basis for a whole year. So the red bar there is the treatment plot. Within the first month, all the leaves drop, and then they don't get any leaf litter afterwards. The blue bar there, it shows the fluctuation of that constant leaf rain on the soil surface. Those leaves, again, each one of those leaves has a bit of nitrogen in it, increasing the soil nitrogen, exacerbating the problem with invasive species, because like I said before, native species are not adapted to utilize that excess nitrogen. So another thing here, we've got the canopy height after a treatment. Oh, the understory canopy height, forgive me. So after a treatment, we see the predominantly invasive trees underneath these. After the treatment, that understory will increase. Whereas if without being treated, it sort of stays the same. So that understory canopy without treatment will stay sort of the same. After the treatment gets higher. And the reason that that's good is because of the bottom graph there, the bare ground percentage. Yeah, after Albizia treatment, which is the red bar there, the bare ground percentage decreases quite a lot because that invasive sub-canopy, that understory canopy, consumes all of the sunlight that's going to penetrate into the forest floor. All right. And this is why that matters, because like I said, Albizia is shade intolerant. If you can shade out the forest floor, very unlikely that those Albizia seedlings are going to sprout. And this is sort of like, it's the Achilles heel of the Albizia tree. If you can just keep the forest floor covered and shaded, then the Albizia will not resprout. And so what we have here is, on this side, we've got our control plot, which is the trees were not treated. So, there's like between the vegetated quadrant and the cleared quadrant. So here we've got a cleared quadrant. They went through, they pulled all the weeds out, they exposed the soil surface, and then they're calculating how many seedlings per hectare are actually germinating in that exposed soil. Here on this side, we've got a treatment plot. So we treated all the Albizia trees. They left these quadrats vegetated. They did not pull all the weeds out. And in this quadrant, they pulled all the weeds out. And this is the number of Albizia seedlings that germinate in that quadrat extrapolated out to the hectare. So what this says is 7 million, they calculated 7 million Albizia seedlings germinating per hectare if you extrapolated it out from this small, 1 meter quadrat. Okay, so that's about 3.5 million Albizia seedlings per acre. Now, why would that be important? If you buy a plot of land and you bulldoze that plot of land and it's surrounded by Albizia trees, and you bulldoze an acre of if you bulldoze an acre of land surrounded by Albizia trees, you can pretty much expect that about 3.5 million Albizia seedlings are going to germinate and start to grow in that. And that is not a far-fetched number. That is, well, it's not a far-fetched number because the researchers tell us that that's a very likely scenario. So now, when you buy your new plot in Puna or wherever up at the Hamakua coast and you decide to bulldoze it and then move back to Florida or whatever, and then not come back for the next 10 years, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed to have 100-foot tall, 1 acre of 100-foot tall Albizia trees, and there will be thousands of them. So that's the bottom line to this research, or to this part of the research, is keep your understory vegetation, keep your ground cover intact when you're doing Albizia treatments. That way you're not going to exacerbate the problem because there's not going to be tons and tons of Albizia seedling. And if you do scarify the soil or disturb the soil or disturb the subcanopy layer, then expect that you're going to have a lot of Albizia coming in. And so it's a management tool to have these decisions. And this is showing how Albizia falls apart over time. Again, this is Dr. Flint Hughes at the Forest Service Institute for Pacific Island Forestry. It's his research team. They're watching the trees fall apart and estimating how long does it take for that tree to fall apart. And they're saying, it's probably about at least 3 years. And I'm about to show you a few photos that says it's probably more like 5 years it takes to break down. Oh, but one point that I did want to make, and I just talked to Dr. Hughes about this. One thing he wanted me to express was that what we see and observe, we don't have exact data on this, although they were looking at thousands of trees. We have seen thousands of trees, but observational data indicates that the trees, when they're treated with milestone, tend to fall apart, what we do from the top down. So the leaves fall out within a couple of weeks. The smaller fine branches, they fall out within a couple months. The larger branches, they start to kind of break down. After about 1.5 years, it's mostly just like the bigger limbs that are still attached. After about 2 years, it's like the main bole of the tree is still standing. And then that takes quite some time to fall apart and break and fall down onto the soil surface. So the important part of that is that instead of having this catastrophic fall down, which could easily happen in a wind event, we've got these trees that are bare. Wind goes right through them. They don't tend to just fall over in high wind events. And they just slowly fall apart in a controlled way. And this is our observation. It's the observation of these researchers from the Forest Service. Now, that said, again, we only treat non-hazardous trees because you can sit here and go, well, Bill and Dr. Hughes told me that these things fall apart in a very controlled way. So I'm going to treat this one over my catchment and it's going to be okay because I can just clear away the debris. Well, 1 out of however many trees will just catastrophically fall down. And so we certainly do not want to treat anything that is hazardous to something important. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few examples of some of the work that we've done. So here we've got Hawaii Paradise Park, Maku'u Avenue. We got funding through the state grant and aid. We hired a contract arborist to come through and treat all the, trim up all of the hazardous trees and make them non-hazardous. There were 54 properties with hazardous Albizia, over 80 properties total, and almost 2 miles of roadway. It cost about $145,000 to mitigate 406 hazardous trees. That's about $357 per tree. And I'm going to show you why that's less expensive than it would be if you just said, you know, just cut these trees down. And so this is what it looks like. In those yellow triangles there, that was historically where the canopy was. So what we did was we had the arborists come through, they laid the tree back. In other words, they cut all that stuff that's hanging out over Maku'u Avenue there and made it safe. So they went from being hazardous trees impacting Maku'u Avenue to being non-hazardous trees. And then we can come through and treat them with herbicide. It's a very cost-effective way because, like I said, $357 to deal with that tree. If we had asked them to fell the tree down to the ground, chip it up and remove that, it would have been, I mean, conservatively, at least 10 times that cost. It would have been at least, I'm sure, at least $3,000 to have an arborist come in and remove that tree fully. So speaking of arborists, if you're considering, you know, having an arborist do some work on your property, on your Albizia trees, a few tips, if you're willing to go out and treat the tree yourself, especially, then have them only trim the hazardous part of the tree and just leave the rest of the tree, like in this example. And if you can go out and treat the tree yourself, then you are going to save yourself a lot of money. Another way to save yourself a lot of money is have them just leave the debris on your property. Hauling away the debris is about 40 to 50% of the cost of the removal. And if you're felling the tree down to the stump, then make sure it is explicitly written in the contract that that stump gets treated with herbicide. If the stump doesn't get treated with herbicide, 100% guarantee, you can quote me on it, that stump will resprout and you're gonna have to deal with that tree again. So make sure that stump gets treated with herbicide. So a couple quick photos. Here's some before pictures over here on the left-hand side, and after pictures after the arborist came in and made safe all of these Albizia trees. So then we came back afterward, treated all those Albizia trees, and now they are leafless and lifeless. Another example, all those trees were treated. You can see the during and on the left, and then the after on the right there. Those trees are defoliated, but they're not going to come back. So here's a project that we did with Helco several years ago. Before photo on the left, the after photo on the right, some helicopter imagery that we were able to get. It was 1 mile of power line. It took us about 6 weeks to do this project with Helco. They paid $224,000 for all the hazardous trees to get dealt with along this power line. It was really cool. They had a whole team of arborists, high climbing arborists up in these trees. It was really something actually to watch these guys work. Then our team came in, treated all those trees within 100 meters of that power line to make them safe from the Albizia trees. So really cool project. It was really great to work with Helco on this one. So there's before, there's after. There's 1 year after on the left, 2 years after on the right, 3 years after again here on the left. You can still see that there's lots of stems still standing up. And then here's 5 years after. That was just a couple weeks ago we were able to acquire this helicopter imagery. So you can see after about 5 years, even the main stems are pretty much broken down and fallen down to the ground. Another example here, we worked with HDOT and County Public Works along Winoco Street. They paid the contract arborists to go through and mitigate all the hazardous trees. We went through, we treated over 20,000 trees with milestone herbicide and on 32 properties. Again, that's our specialty. We can go out, get the permission to work outside of the right of way. The county, the state, all those folks, they work within their right of way. They mitigate the hazard. And then we go through and we treat these trees with this milestone application. So grand total since 2013, we here at BISC have treated over 180,000 Albizia trees. Now, I asked you before to keep in mind that first number at the very beginning of this of the talk, and that was 140 trees, 140 Albizia trees planted throughout the state. We've already treated 180,000 Albizia trees, and it's like a blip on the radar. These things, they grow fast, they spread very quickly. So we've treated 181,000 trees, over 5,500 acres, and for sure more than 10 priority road miles and priority power line miles. So you can see, okay, in the map right there, all those green dots are treated Albizia. Clearly that's not 181,000, but for graphical purposes, you can see that it's, we've spread out across all of East Hawaii. And are there any questions, by the way? I'm sorry, I've been just kind of going for a while. If there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah, I believe there was a question about if uprooted saplings can regrow. So if you pull out the young ones, just pull that straight out, will it try to reroot?
Well, so thank you for that. So what we do is when we pull a sapling out of the ground, a seedling out of the ground, we'll kind of hang it up on something, or we'll lay it on top of another whatever around, instead of, because if you pull it out and you throw it maybe down on, into the mud or something like that, if there's wet soil there, I bet it would probably regrow. In fact, let's just assume, yes, they will most likely regrow if you pull it out. So pull it out and then just hang it up in a tree, or just keep it off of the soil surface, and then that should be fine.
Another question, Milestone, it is so effective in such a small amount, but it is pricey to buy a bottle of Milestone. Is there, are there other tree species that you can use Milestone on?
Thank you. Yeah. So there are other tree species. We don't have amazing data to say for sure it works on these tree species. But we've talked to lots of people. We've treated a few ourselves. We know things like gunpowder, Malokia, it works pretty well on, Cecropia. So there are some, like that kind of soft, fast growing wood, it works well on. Something like strawberry guava, most likely it doesn't. That real hardwood, I don't have a good way of describing who or what is susceptible to Milestone. But some of those softer, faster growing trees, yeah, they're likely susceptible to Milestone. Anything else, Franny?
No, but we do have a comment from Justin who says it's great that you're addressing that homeowners should only apply herbicide to the non-hazardous trees, and just how important it is that before they treat a tree, they make sure it's not overhanging any kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad that you noticed that. I try to beleaguer that point a little bit, try to bring it home several times throughout any of these talks, because it is incredibly important. Once you apply this herbicide, there ain't no going back, and that tree is going to die, and it is going to be hazardous or not. It's going to fall on whatever, it's going to fall down. And so if you apply herbicide to that tree, and you decide later that you say you want to have it removed, or that you want to develop that property, it's, for an arborist or even like a bulldozer operator, they're really reluctant to work underneath those dead trees. And so, think about your long-term plan with that property before you make your applications, because again, if you want to develop that property, then you're going to just wait. Just don't do the application yet. Get your long-term plan together before you do any applications, because again, arborists and bulldozer operators are not going to want to work underneath that Albizia trees. They're very unsafe, unpredictable.
Yeah, we know that only too well. Kavehi, are there any comments coming in from Facebook that Bill should address at this time?
There's one about Albizia, like dangerous trees on neighboring properties. Were you going to address that?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Okay.
Coming up very shortly. When I get through that, Kavehi, if it doesn't seem like I addressed their question, then please let me know.
Okay.
So, okay, moving on here. So now the technical working group, the third thing that came out of that technical working group was, let's engage the community again so that they can be empowered to deal with the Albizia on their property within their community. So that's something that we've gotten a lot of value out of, and a lot of enjoyment as well, working with community members. Since 2014, since we started this effort, we've engaged over 550 community members in workshops, either like this or in hands-on workshops where we actually go out and teach people how to treat their own Albizia trees. And during those workshops, we've treated, with these groups over 13,000 trees. They are a lot of fun, and hopefully we can do another one some point soon. You know, maybe after social distancing can kind of go away, we can do some more of these community engagement workshops. They're a lot of fun getting people together. I mean, those smiles that you're seeing there, they're not fake. It's a lot of fun to kill Albizia trees. So here's a couple of examples of community engagement. Actually, these are folks that took it upon themselves to work within their own communities to make an impact, or a broader impact. On the left-hand side here, we've got the Ainaloa community. These retired folks, we love these guys. These guys are great. They actually made their own nonprofit called Albizia Be Gone. They got, you know, some small amounts of donations so that they could buy herbicide, they could buy mailings and these kinds of things. And they peppered all of Ainaloa with these mail out property permission requests, and they got over 300 responses. So they went out onto these properties, treated the non-hazardous trees that they could. They even actually got enough donations to do some tree felling, so to actually get arborists to come out and reduce the hazard so that they could treat the trees. These are great guys, and they're a lot of fun to work with. Over here on the right, Seaview Estates, very similar. There's a couple that lives out in Seaview that took it upon themselves to get property permission. We would, you know, for a couple of years, we would bring the crew out once a month, and we would do treatments with them. And we treated thousands of trees with these guys in Seaview Estates. A lot of fun to work with those folks. Now here's getting to this, it's my neighbor's tree situation. Now it is problematic. If it's your own tree on your own property, then you can mitigate it yourself, right? But if it's on your neighbor's property, then there is a step-by-step system that we sort of promote that often can lead to positive impact. So it starts with contacting the landowner. Now, if it's a person that you know, maybe they live next door to you or something like that, and you've got a large Albizia tree on their property that could impact your property. First off, if you can walk over, knock on their door and talk to them, then that's the best way to start. So try to communicate with them. If you have a phone number, try to do some, you know, personal interactions with your neighbors to see if you could just explain to them, this Albizia tree is a hazard, or this other tree is a hazard. And often that works. Maybe they just don't even realize, oh, well, that's my shade tree, but I didn't realize that it's leaning over your catchment or whatever. So that does have positive results, is just talking to them. Now, sometimes either, you know, the neighbor doesn't live there, the neighbor is not approachable, the neighbor could live who knows where. And so you want to send them a letter and explaining all of this. But there's some criteria within that letter that is really helpful. One, mail it certified mail. When you start this process, you know, get yourself a folder, a spreadsheet, something, and keep track of all this information. And so what you want to do is you send them a certified letter with certain information in it. Now that information on our website, bisc.org, BISC.org/Albizia. And I have that later in the presentation. If you look on that, there's templates in English and as well in Japanese. Oh, here's bisc.org/Albizia right there. So there's templates in English and in Japanese explaining to this neighbor that, you know, your house, your infrastructure is being impacted by their Albizia tree. Include photos. Any of the photos that you include, make sure that the hazard is really clearly labeled in the photo. Okay, you know, just snapping a picture and walking away, it typically doesn't cut it. You want to get that angle so you can see that the tree is impacting the house, the fence, the catchment, the power lines, or whatnot. Okay, so send them certified mail with a template letter or your own letter with photos. Keep photocopies of everything and put it in your folder. Now, if those trees are not hazardous, it is very frequent that the neighbor will say, sure, you can access my property to treat those Albizia trees. Again, like I said before, the best time to treat an Albizia tree is when they're small and vulnerable. So if you see your neighbor has a bunch of small Albizia, if you can reach out to them and ask them if you can just treat the tree, often, if not almost always, they'll say, yes, go ahead. And so that's the best possible scenario, is get to them before they become a hazard. So that's step one, reach out to the landowner. Send them certified mail, try to talk to them in person if can. Keep a hold of all that documentation. Okay, so step two, you mailed out your certified letter to the landowner. You waited 30 days, you got no response or a negative response. Then it's time to contact the county. On the county's website, it addresses unsafe flora. So you make an unsafe flora, you fill out a form, you click on the unsafe flora, and then that automatically sends that neighbor a letter, okay? So now your chances increase because the neighbor got a letter from you, and now the neighbor got a letter from the county, and somewhere on that letter it says, from the county it says, if you don't deal with this tree and we have to go deal with it, then we will likely put a lien on your property and you'll have to pay it when you sell the property. So the chances increase, with each of these steps. But let's just say, you appeal to the county and you don't get a response within 30 days. So you're either gonna wait for the county's response or you're gonna contact the state, Hawaii Emergency Management, I can't remember, HEMA. So you're gonna reach out to HEMA. Typically what we suggest people do is reach out to the county and HEMA at the same time. Both of them want you to have sent a certified letter and wait for 30 days. So send that letter, wait for 30 days, reach out to the county and to HEMA concurrently. Now, while the county is simply, filling out a web form, hitting the go button, a letter is mailed out to the property owners. The state wants a little bit more information than that. They want you to get talk to a qualified arborist to get a tree risk assessment. Okay, then which you have to pay for, by the way, the property owner pays for. And maybe you can appeal to the other property owner, like whoever's making the request is going to pay for that. You might be able to appeal to the other property owner, but typically you're probably going to have to eat that cost. So get the tree risk assessment, contact the homeowner again. State wants you to contact the homeowner 2 times and keep proof that you did that. So contact them again and say that you got this tree risk assessment done by a qualified arborist. Again, have those photos, have that risk assessment in that with that template letter, and send that off again, certified mail. So that's a little bit more complicated of a process to work with the state. Once you've gone through all those steps, then you actually mail all of that information into the state HEMA office to Steve Sigler, and then they take over. They'll make that phone call, or they'll send out that letter to the property owner. But so if you're catching me here, you're waiting at 30 days, and then you're going through all these process steps. The state, takes over. It takes a long time. But as you move through these steps, your chances of success are increasing. And what we suggest, what I encourage people to do, is get started right away, because it takes a long time and that tree's only getting bigger. And I think I see a question from Franny.
Yeah, Bill, I just want to point out to folks that there are links to the tax map key with kind of, recommendations on how to use it. There is the link to the form that you use to contact the county, that unsafe flora report form, and all of this information about the address and everything that you need to send to the state HEMA office. All of that is on our website at www.bisc.org/Albizia under useful links and documents. So, if anybody is trying to quickly try to write all of this down, you can go to the website and find all of that information. Trying to look if we have a question. So there is a question, Bill, and I don't know if you know exactly the answer to this, but a question about a certified arborist versus a qualified arborist. Is there a difference, or are you kind of referring to the same thing there?
Well, thank you for that. I'll have to look at this and make sure that I have my wording right on the, well, a certified arborist, yeah, I guess a qualified arborist for this tree risk assessment would be certified to make the assessment. So thank you for pointing that out, actually. So in order to do the tree risk assessment, the arborist is going to have to be certified to make that assessment. You know, there may be some qualified arborists out there that could make, you know, the call, but in order for all of this, you know, for the paperwork to be effective and helpful, you're going to need actually a certified arborist to make that tree risk assessment.
And we do have a list of certified arborists on our website as well. So all the phone numbers and addresses are there so folks can use that as a guide.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's, you know, actually our bisc.org/Albizia, it's a really handy website. There's a lot of good information on there. So please check it out. Okay, anything else, Franny?
Kavehi, anything on Facebook that should be addressed?
No.
No, okay, well, I will move on then. Thank you. And again, we just went over this. Keep all your records, make sure your photos are clearly showing the hazard. And you know, as you move through the process, your chances of success improve. But it's going to take, no matter what, even the best possible scenario, it's going to take some time. So start the process right away. And in summary, you know, it's a lot of fun to kill lots and lots of Albizia trees. You can see lots of smiling faces there. That's our team. We got Franny down there at the bottom, and our team. And with that, I would like to say thank you all very much. There's my contact information right there. And again, check out bisc.org/Albizia.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. And we're already getting thank yous in the comments from folks. And I appreciate everyone coming out here today and learning more about Albizia, because as I think you did a really good job, Bill, of pointing out throughout this webinar how important the community part of this has been, and just how much a role that our Big Island community has played in, you know, working with us to get permissions and organizing their neighbors and, you know, contacting the county and the state and reporting hazardous trees. I mean, there's just, it is a huge job and nothing that one agency could do. And we really appreciate everyone being here, learning more about Albizia and doing all that work. So I'm going to check one more time. Team, do we have any questions that have gone unanswered that Bill could answer at this time?
Oh, I want to point out this board, that board's made out of Albizia. It's a surfboard made out of Albizia, local shaper, artist. I mentioned that earlier.
Specially designed for Bill.
Yep. Well, thank you all very much. I really appreciate the thoughtful questions and for folks showing up. And, you know, again, if you have any more questions, contact us through the website, or you can contact me at my email there, buckleyw@hawaii.edu.
Okay. And I think I don't see any other questions coming in. Did I miss anything? Molly, Jade, Kavehi?
Nope, got it all.
Nope. And
I'm
were
new.
you posting this on?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Where was this getting posted after?
Yes,
It's done.
good question. Yeah, so we will be posting this webinar on our website. There's right now, I think it's under education, our webinars page. It'll probably take a couple days for us to get it up there. So it should be up there hopefully by the weekend.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording now. Again, thanks so much to everybody. And